Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. Share markets across the globe have witnessed a sharp loss after a sell off in America triggered by US President Donald Trump on Monday refusing to rule out the suggestion that his tariffs could trigger a recession in the world's biggest economy. Now, US bond yields also dropped as investor worries about the potential economic slowdown were exacerbated by Trump's remarks saying the US economy was in a period of transition amid his fluctuating trade policies as Mexico, Canada, and China, which could dampen consumer and corporate investment. Some $4 trillion, it seems, that the American markets have lost. But what will be the impact on countries like India? And can India really insulate itself from this Trump storm? Where are we heading to? In which direction is the economy headed to? So, all these are very worrisome questions, and we'll try and find out answers to this. And is there a solution for it? That's a $1 million question. Joining me now is TK Arun, veteran business journalist, with us this evening. Thank you so much, Arun, for joining.
Hi.
We have Dr. Aftab Kamal Pasha, who's a international affairs expert, and he's also been a diplomat. Thank you, sir, so much for joining. And we have Sanjay Kapoor, international affairs expert and veteran journalist. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining. And let me begin with Mr. TK Arun today, that Trump saying that the country is in a state of transition. $4 trillion is a huge amount, which the American markets have almost crashed. From Wall Street to India, some ripples have been felt. And what is really going to be the impact? I mean, is this one of the biggest disruptors, you would say, after Trump has assumed presidency?
In fact, this might be a stabilizing factor because Trump is actually quite sensitive to how the markets behave. And if the market's verdict is negative, there is a greater incentive for him to modulate his policy. Now, for which also he is extremely, he has announced tariffs, suspended them. He has announced tariffs, suspended them a second time. And many people think that these are transactional moves. That when he says that he levied 25% tariff on a particular country or imports from a particular country, he is trying to bargain to get something in return so as not to levy that tariff. You don't know. So when the markets behave like this, then it tells Trump that this is not going down very well with his supporters. And it's not just the market. There's a news coming in, like for example from Canada. Canada is desired to retaliate. It's not taking it lying down. It's not just the Prime Minister Trudeau, now currently ex-Prime Minister Trudeau, who has told Donald Trump this is a very dumb move. In fact, the politicians across Canada have realized that standing up to America has very good buy-in from the voters. So the Premier of the state of Ontario has declared that he will levy a 25% tariff on the electricity it exports to the US. So millions of consumers in the US will feel the pinch if Canada raises the price of the electricity by 25%. And Americans are boycotting, Canadians are boycotting American produce, whether it is bourbon, whiskey, or American soft drinks, or many things. People are canceling their planned visits to Disneyland and to the Grand Canyon. So Americans are getting the message that this is not some unilateral Trump-driven steamrolling of external opinion, but there will be a backlash and they will be hurt too. And if Trump senses this, that Americans are displeased, he might well change his policy. So the market's negative reaction to my mind is a stabilizing factor which might actually apply some corrective.
No, so
But
you are saying that this could be a stabilizing factor on Donald Trump.
yes,
He's seeing that the markets are in a tizzy, so he will come back to those corrective measures.
yes, exactly.
Okay. So that's a positive indication you are talking about. But Professor Pasha, if I may ask you, I'll come back to you, Mr. Arun. But Professor Pasha, how would you really see this? The markets going in a tizzy, and the various countries of the world really not knowing as to what should be done. Now, today also we saw Commerce Secretary telling a parliamentary panel yesterday that they have not committed anything to US. So, which means that Donald Trump has been saying that India has conceded to reduce the tariffs, and here the Commerce Secretary telling the parliamentary panel that we've not made any commitment to US. So, which means that and he also said, the Commerce Secretary also said that they are working on a long-term broad agreement between India and US, and India may not get impacted by these reciprocal tariffs. How much are we to believe, and who is actually speaking the truth? Is it Donald Trump or our own Indian government? Or they are just trying to ward off this controversy which has erupted because of Donald Trump's unpredictable policies? Yes, Dr. Pasha.
Yeah, firstly, I agree with Mr. Arun. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Arun on the broad parameters he has outlined on the American economy, tariff, and the zigzag policy of the Trump administration and the reaction from its major partners, Canada, China, Mexico. For quite some time, many people in the US and abroad, have been worried about the elevated valuations among US equities for quite some time. And we're looking for the catalyst for a market correction. So what Mr. Arun has been saying is exactly this, that American stocks were overevaluated and some kind of stability was needed, correction mechanism. So I think we are into that phase. But coming to your point, either Mr. Trump is lying or our Commerce Secretary is lying, or both don't want to speak the truth. There must be somewhere in between. We are caught in a very precarious situation. The United States is one of the largest trading partners. And, unlike from the first Trump administration, we don't seem to have learned anything from his threats to impose a tariff. And, if you recall, in his first administration, he had threatened tariff, and he had called for strict action for those countries which don't allow American products in other countries. So, you see, if you study the behavior of China and India, the Chinese seem to have learned and better prepared this time for what Trump is threatening to do or has done. Because like India, China also suffered from the tariffs in the first administration, and they retaliated over many agriculture products, although they agreed to buy certain products. But now they are in a position to create a crisis in at least 8 American states from where they buy soybean, sorghum, and corn and other things, which will put enormous pressure on Trump. We seem to be caught napping, and we still live in the fantasy that America is our strategic partner, Trump is my dear friend, and all of these things, whereas Trump is a cold person, he wants to correct the balance of trade deficit and the growing gap between imports and exports and the increasing debt and the burden of servicing that huge debt of about $37 trillion. They have to pay $800 billion minimum every year to service their debt. And American securities, after some time, people will think 100 times before buying American securities, which will be worthless. So in that way, you see, we are part of the globalization of trade and supply chain and so on and so forth. But we had to take precautions because, on the one hand, we want to be part of the BRICS, which wants greater trade among the southern countries or developing countries, including Russia, China, Brazil, South Africa, and the greater part of Africa and Asia. But at the same time, we seem to be panicking about this threat from America to impose tariffs. Although we can diversify after some time with some effort and energizing our trade partnerships with other countries. But you see, if you see the consumer electronics or jewelry or agricultural products, textiles, and other things. These can easily be diverted to other markets by providing incentives to buyers. So I don't know why we are panicking so much about this American threat to impose taxes. And also, we have a stable partner as far as arms are concerned. The Russians are willing to give the latest fifth generation fighter aircraft and everything we ask for. Not only the ready-made, but also co-production and sharing of technology and for third-party exports also, which America is hesitant. They have not committed fully that they will give the advanced
Pasha, you are saying
F-35
that there are
or
not
other planes for reconnaissance.
Professor Pasha, you are saying that there are not enough reasons for India to worry as much as it's being made out to?
No, not at all. You see, I don't know why this government is panicking and this knee-jerk reaction of the Prime Minister going and assuring and signing a lengthy document to import anything and everything which America, even if they throw in the garbage, we are willing to buy fodder for the animals, as if we don't have fodder for our animals and they are dying and starving. Oil, gas, and agriculture products, all this will impact our economy with 70 years of hard work from our agriculture engineers and self-reliance and other policies. We are standing on our feet and we are a food security country and we can take care of ourselves in many other sectors which were denied to us. We had to survive on the basis of second-hand technology from Soviet Union and other countries. But now, when we are in a position to stand on our feet, we seem to be terrified and panicking, and I don't see any logic in the government to see why we should feel threatened when we are economically a very big market. We are self-sufficient in food and in basic pharmaceutical, chemical, iron, aluminum, or nuclear power, or biotechnology, so on and so forth.
Okay, so let me come to you, Sanjay. Now that what do we read? Is India almost like in a surrender mode before Donald Trump, even though the need is not as much as it's been made out? Like TK Arun also said that these are positive indications, and Donald Trump will correct his policies. Then Professor Pasha also said that I don't know why India is in such a panic mode. Why is India panicking in the sense that now? The Commerce Secretary has gone ahead and said that we've not committed anything. Now, is that statement coming out of some kind of a positivity, or is India confident, or is everybody reading it incorrectly that India is in a panic mode, which India is not actually? How does one read the situation?
Yeah, I think it's rather bewildering as to why India is behaving like this. The total implications of the tariff punishment that Mr. Trump wants to, put it on us is the implications of just about $7 billion. This is the study which was conducted by World Bank. $7 billion in the economy, or which is trading worth $150 billion, is not very much by any stretch of imagination. On top of that, you also have this thing that India is not at wrong. I mean, there's been an overinflation of all kinds of statistics to show that the tariff that is charged is far more than what it is. And India has done nothing wrong. It's been a signatory of the WTO, and so is the United States of America. Ideally, there should not be any reciprocal tariff that President Donald Trump should apply. But he's his own man. He thinks nothing of the rules or whatever has been decided by multilateral bodies, and he'll do pretty much what he wants. But what is really worrying is that I don't think the government of India is really worried about its implications on economy, because economy is not very much. If you recall that the time when Trump was the president, the first term between 2016 to 2020, or right up 21, uh, India had two skirmishes with China, one in Doklam, the other one near skirmish was near in Doklam and Galwan, sorry, both of them. So the fear is that if there is if we don't play by Mr. Trump's rules, there could be something similar that could happen on our borders. So India wants to avoid that. I think what Prime Minister Modi is trying to do is to pursue a kind of politics which doesn't provoke Donald Trump. He wants to be on his right side, which is good or bad. That's a different matter. But there is seriously an attempt to ensure that we don't end up provoking China, US, because if we end up provoking US, like how the Canadians are behaving or the Mexicans are behaving, we would lose out on all the benefits that have come to us being close to the US in the last 10, 15 years, ever since we signed the civilian nuclear deal. And we don't want to look hostile. So that is why I think India has been trying very hard to look very calm and giving an impression of equanimity. But I don't think that there is anything that India can do as of now. We have to make it amply clear that is a national interest that we are protecting, not anything else. And national interest is non-partisan. Political parties may come and go, but it has to be
Right.
defended very, very sternly. Ideally, what the Prime Minister should do or the BJP should do is to call the Congress party, call other opposition parties, and have an all-party meeting and tell them exactly what kind of pressure they are being subjected to, and tell them
No,
what
but
they will do.
ideally speaking, Sanjay, ideally speaking, after all what has happened, Prime Minister came back, then as Jaishankar has also visited US, and Piyush Goyal also visited US, and there were all sorts of reports on how he didn't get an appointment, and then somehow he's returned back with whatever negotiations have happened. But the point is that don't you think that this answering should have been done by the Prime Minister or Piyush Goyal or Mr. S. Jaishankar rather than a Commerce Secretary going and briefing the parliamentary panel?
I think they're buying time. They don't want to take a position right away. That is why you have Mr. Piyush Goyal, who is going to visit Washington very soon, all over again, which is very
Hmm.
unusual because it's very clear that in the first trip he didn't make much headway. He could not
But then
spend
this
much
is
time
also
in the
leading to a
conversation.
lot of speculation. This is also leading to a lot of speculation, which could not be right for the image
Very
of
true,
the.
very true. I think I can tell you from my own understanding and whatever information that I gather that there is a great amount of panic within our foreign establishment. They don't know how it is all going to play out. And they are worrying in a certain way that how far will President Trump go, although he's decided to postpone the reciprocal tariff that he would have imposed on the 2nd of April. But that is just the starting point. I mean, I'm sure there is some discussion that is taking place between Indian and the American diplomats, and they would show up their cards very soon. But it's not a very happy situation because there are things which are going to be dealt at a political level. That is not really just trade and commerce which is going to be talked about. There are far more things in the fire that needs to be pulled out and taken care of. And I
True.
think, despite the fact that the prime minister keeps sending the commerce minister and the finance minister to do the job, but he has to, I think, bite the bullet rather than anybody else. Last time, if you remember, I reminded you of the little strategy that was deployed by former Prime Minister Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. He was under pressure ideally because of was the commitment that it had been made by his deputy, Mr. Al Advani, that Indian troops would be going to Iraq. I mean, their boots would be on the ground. And Mr. Vajpayee was very cognizant of how things can go wrong. And that is when he chose to call his old friend, the CPR leader, A.B. Bardhan, and told him that he has to do something about it. And A.B. Bardhan organized a large protest, and the matter was brought up in the parliament, and there was a fair amount of furor thereafter. And Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee conveyed to the Americans that this is an unacceptable suggestion on the part of the United States of America, to ask for troops, Indian troops, into Iraq. So that matter was thrown out of the window, and it was back to normal. So something similar could be attempted by the Prime Minister here. He has to show that he's not really a heavyweight that he's making out to be. He's more democratic, and I'm sure there would be an outcome which would be useful for the country.
But who
I
are
would
the allies, Sanjay? Who are the allies? Who are the allies the prime minister has? He doesn't have a AB Bardhan type. Would he ask the RSS, VHP, and Bajrang Dal and all his other people to come on the street and demonstrate against the United States? I don't
He
think
could have
he is completely.
like Chandrababu.
It is not a practical solution Even the other point that America would help us if there is a showdown with China. I think we need to look into this aspect. I don't think you see, when the Americans have dished the Europeans and NATO on Ukraine, do you think on a matter of such importance for the United States, they will come to our rescue and eliminate China? That is too much asking the United States. There is a showdown with China. Don't you think
Right.
so?
I mean, if you want me to answer to it, I can answer it at great length, but the issue will get diverted. But the fact of the
We can
matter
have a
is,
separate discussion on that if
we can have
Nilu
a separate
wants it.
discussion
No,
at great
no, but
length. I
right.
don't want to take away Nilu's time.
No. I just want to come back to that question to Arun once again. That Arun, you said that there are a lot of positive indications coming out of it, and Donald Trump could stabilize things. But just few days back, we heard Nirmala Sitharaman saying that this America's tariff war is going to have an impact on India. Now, what is the immediate impact you see? Because Sunil Bartwal, now this story which was published in Times of India today, where it very clearly says that no commitment to US on tariffs, the government to parliamentary panel. Now, here this Commerce Secretary, Sunil Bartwal, went ahead and said that there could be no impact of the reciprocal tariff on India, and we are trying to work things, we are trying to buy time. What is really happening, and will India be affected at all? Because the finance minister says something else, Commerce Secretary is going ahead and trying to convince people with something else. Where are we headed to, actually?
Let's see this in perspective. This is not just about tariffs. Now, by proposing to levy different levels of tariffs on commodities in different countries, Trump is demolishing the concept of the most favored nation, which is a bedrock of the WTO, earlier GATT system. That the tariff you levy, unless it's part of a bilateral or a free trade area agreement, will be uniform across countries. So he is doing it with that. In the first term, he refused to appoint judges to the appellate body on the World Trade Organization. The World Trade Organization's specific advantage is that it has a dispute settlement mechanism where the dispute can be settled and there is a question, you can go to the appellate body. Now that body has been effectively dismantled, but not being judges being appointed. So that is another setback. And a trade war that is proposing across the world with the EU, with China, with his own close neighbors, will mean that there will be a negative impact on global growth. How large will depend on the actual tariffs finally enforced. So this will affect growth across the board. This will affect trade volumes across the board. And how much India will be affected will depend on how we negotiate the bilateral tariffs. Now, bilateral tariffs means what? It depends a whole lot on how it's applied. You know, if it goes to individual product line, then we will not be affected because the structure of India's imports from the US and the structure of India's export to the US are completely different. We import apples from the US. We export oranges. If they levy reciprocal tariffs on apples, we are okay. If they levy reciprocal tariffs on oranges, then we are not okay. But if it's a broad category of fruit, then we will be affected. Our export of oranges will be affected. So, I mean, similarly, cars. How many cars will be imported? So, the point is that these bikes that he is so fond of, Harley Davidson, very heavy bikes, how many bikes will we import? See, even if you start the duty, it's not really going to matter too much. I don't think we are panicking at all. We are playing it intelligently. We are not committing immediately at the official level to any exact duty levels or cutbacks. Our strategy should be for the 4 years that Trump is in office to keep things going as well as possible and not bind ourselves into long-term commitments that will harm our economic interests or harm our strategic autonomy.
Hmm.
So, as and when pressure comes on us to take a stand, we should take a stand. Some concessions we should be able to make,
No, so
minimizing the damage to
Arun,
overall.
no, but Arun, is India taking the right position as far as dealings with America are concerned?
So far, yes. We
Okay.
are at a political level, we are taking a mollifying stand. We are not taking any harsh stand. At a actual level of the bureaucracy, with civil servants which negotiate
No, but
tariffs, etc.,
diplomatically
we
speaking,
haven't taken any stand.
no, but Arun, are we not putting a lot of things on the altar as far as our dignity is concerned, as far as the diplomatic integrity is concerned? It seems that we are almost in a surrender mode.
No, I don't think we are on a surrender mode. For example, the Americans recently made a statement. India should stop buying arms from Russia right now. Right. Now, I don't think India is going to stop buying arms from Russia. But if we do that, then of course, what you said is correct. We are in surrender mode. We are not standing up for our own interests. But I don't think that is what's going to happen. India is too large a country to be bullied by the US or any other power. So we might not be very abrasive in how we defend our stand, but I don't think we are going to surrender core interests. That will not be either politically sustainable in the first place. Even if the government wants to, it will not be possible for the government to do that. There will be a strong backlash from all sections of Indian society. So, I mean, but this government is kind of silly. For example, this cartoon in Anand Bhagatan, which the government has censored, which showed Trump sitting with Modi and Modi is wearing chains. It is a cartoon which ripped off on the Indian deportees from the US arriving in India in chains. And it showed uh, our Prime Minister's inability to make any strong protests against the Trump government. And this the government banned this cartoon. Can you imagine? It put censored this. So the government is being silly in uh, trying to show that it is not in any way subservient to the US. We don't have to be subservient, nor do we have to be very, domineering and abrasive. You don't have to be hostile. You can play it cool. And that is what we should do. And I think that is what we are doing at the level of the civil service, making the kind of complaints we make. India has actually one of the highest average import duties, weighted average import duty in the world. It is 13.7%. Why should we have 13% duty? This had got down to 7.5% before the Modi government came to office. We have been gradually lowering the rates of import tariffs in order to make our Indian industry more competitive and make
True.
sure that something that is sold in India can be sold anywhere in the world. That reversed with Modi's all kinds of policies. Now, if we apply a corrective and lower some of these tariffs, it's good for the economy.
Right.
I don't think we are going to roll back too badly in a hurry. We are negotiating.
Okay. Okay. So we are negotiating. You're saying that the position taken by India is not as wrong as it's being made out to be. So now I'll take the concluding comments on the basis of just what Mr. TK Arun has said. Professor Pasha, coming to you, and then I'll take the concluding remarks from Sanjay. Yes, Professor Pasha. Yes.
Yeah, see, earlier I agreed with Mr. Arun. Now I have to beg to differ with him. There are two contradictions. One is the issue of backlash, and another one is the panicking issue. You see, I am just going to briefly narrate what China has been doing. China's approach is let's wait and see. Are we doing that? Has it sent any trade minister to Washington to negotiate? Whereas we rushed our foreign minister, our prime minister, everybody. And what the Chinese are doing is to apply more fiscal stimulus to mitigate the expected impact. Are we doing that? Have we announced any stimulus package? If you say on a surface that we are announcing stimulus
Yeah, I think there's some audio problem at Professor Pasha's end. So we'll try and wait for him to come back. But in the meanwhile, I'll come to you, Sanjay. What would you really say on the basis of what Mr. Arun has said? Very briefly. And then I hope Professor Pasha
I
can
mean,
come back.
I
Yes.
I kind of agree with the fact that the Indian government is trying to mollify the Americans. They don't want to antagonize them beyond a point, because we must recognize a simple fact, which was also played up by one of the newspapers, that India sees an alignment with Trump's politics. And in doing that, you may disagree, but they think that with Trump around, they would probably have a better chance of, being the master of the region and doing pretty much what they want. But having said that, there is a great amount of unpredictability with Trump, and despite the fact that he is putting pressure on India to do many things, and maybe India will fall in line, maybe it won't. But there is no guarantee that he would just sit quietly till the time he thinks the value of the transaction is over, that he will engage and come up with something else. There is a likelihood of Mr. Trump always showing up something or the other. And if he fails, if he thinks that India is failing in its commitment, there's always something that he can always start off. He has shown ample evidence of how US has been ruling the world through USAID, through the American deep state, and much of the nonsense that has come out from Washington in the last 30, 40 days since he's been in power. And Mr. Donald Trump may resort to the same tactics, because that is how the big powers rules the small ones. And it could be back to square one.
Professor Pasha, I think, has got disconnected. So we'll have to end it here. We'll have to wait and watch how things unfold as far as this trade war and the tariff war continues. And of course, 2nd April is the day when everybody's looking forward to as to what's really going to happen. The countries are preparing themselves, bracing up for what the storm could be. Thank you so much, Mr. TK Arun. Sanjay, it was wonderful to have you on the program.
Thank you so much.
See you. Bye.
And how are you, TK?